Welcome to the Bank Marketing Show, the podcast that engages and informs you for success in today's marketplace. It's the show that will make you a better marketer with trends, tactics, and inspiration from experts and industry leaders. If you're wanting to impact your personal success and position your bank as the best choice in your market, you're in the right place. Now let's dive into today's show with your hosts, Chris and Dan.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bank Marketing Show. Another episode. We are moving on through the year and appreciate all of you guys as listeners and welcome, Dan.
Yeah. Hello, Chris. Hello, everybody.
Yep. Good to be doing another episode with you and looking forward to this one today. This is kind of a compilation of some things, and I'll let you kind of tee this up for us, but this should be a really great episode for everybody in the industry.
Yeah, what we wanted to kind of get into was I've done a lot of workshops and had many more discussions than that with our bank clients on growing social media following, and this has been several years. So we're going to kind of talk today regardless of platform, because the same general things apply to Facebook or LinkedIn or even to TikTok or some of the other platforms out there. So the general thing I always hear is that banks are struggling to grow their followings, right? And it's really people tend to be fixated on the number of followers that their bank pages have, or the number of likes and clicks and stuff on individual posts. But the spirit of the episode today is to talk about it's not the number of followers that your bank page has is not the important thing, right? The important thing is more thinking about and growing your bank's overall presence on Facebook. And that can mean posts about the bank or kind of tangential to the bank from anyone's profile. And the key kind of insight that we'll break apart in this episode is that those posts can come from employees. Those posts can come from customers. Those posts can come from basically anything other than the bank's own profile. And so we'll talk about why that's important, how to kind of think about it, how to create the program in your bank around that.
Dan, we've had several clients ask us also about the use of influencers, under the umbrella of social media marketing. And a lot of the consensus that I hear from community financial institutions is those are uncontrollable entities.
Yeah.
And from a compliance perspective, there's nothing worse than, even if they're saying obviously good things and they're, doing all that it can be a loose cannon, that compliance and nobody has any control over. So that's usually not a fit and it's usually not in play. But what I love about what we're going to talk about today is that your own team is a trainable, directable set of, I love kind of how you help put this title together for this one, is building an army of brand ambassadors. And you can do that and not be so fearful about, compliance issues or incorrect messaging issues or any of those things if you're utilizing your own team well, which is what you're talking about. And what better now, Dan, it's great to do that in the lobby. And it's great for them to do that on the phone and in emails and, all and in person and out in the community. But what we're talking about here with social media is their reach is so much further than the bank's social channels. And if they are really good ambassadors of it, wow, what an opportunity.
Well, it's just so much harder to get just traction off of a corporate page. And both from it's hard to get traction on a corporate page, but also you have a lot more employees than you do corporate pages. You've got one bank page on Facebook, one bank page on LinkedIn, but you've got dozens of employees or more. And, just by sheer number, the reach can go a lot further. Yeah. So today we want to talk through kind of a few different steps of this, right? Talk a little bit more about why it matters, right? To build your brand ambassadors. We'll talk about, how to do that. And, we'll get into both how to do that kind of culturally, how to do it very tactically of like what, policies and procedures and trainings you need in place, what employees can talk about, and then kind of how to turn it into an ongoing program.
There you go. Yeah, and as community bankers and as leaders in community financial institutions, the big sell there that differentiates community financial institutions from the big regionals and certainly the nationals, are relationships, boots on the ground, community engagement, all of that. And relationships are about people, right? And one of the first key points we wanted to make about, under employees, influencers and why they matter is just because of that, because they are real people. Mm-hmm. You and I were talking about this statement, people trust people.
Yeah.
People only trust brands so far, and that's important. We need to build trustworthy brands and through the right messaging and all of those things that we talk about frequently. But people trust people more intuitively, right? Yeah. Obviously, a great example of that is reviews, the effectiveness of reviews. It is so significant, right? So because people see that as that's a person that actually commented that they like this trash can that I'm about to buy and it actually does what it says it's going to do. Well, okay, that's in a retail sense, but in this sense, it's community banks have a built-in advantage from that because our people speak to and are part of the local community.
Yeah, I think there's some hard data around this too. I've seen stats and just roughly speaking of, 5x, 6x traction or 6x more reach, more engagement when a post comes from an employee than when it comes from the bank page. Mm-hmm. And, it can be the employee sharing the bank page, the bank's posts, but the social media really exists to connect people. And just inherently, people feel like posts from a bank page are less authentic, less trustworthy than if it came from a person. So often the first thing that I talk to banks about is like, let's take loan officers, right? Mm-hmm. Single out a group within the bank. Your loan officers, most of their job is out in the community, handshakes, meeting people, networking, going to chambers of commerce, doing things like that. Mm-hmm. This is an extension, right? This could be the loan officer's own profile, doing the same types of things, sharing helpful information, connecting people, things like that. And if you think about like even the same post from a loan officer versus the bank just feels more warm. Mm-hmm. And it's more on brand for a community institution, like you're saying, Chris. Like you could put a big speaker on the front of your bank and announce things to the community, but it would feel very impersonal, right? versus like an actual human going out and meeting people. And that's kind of mm-hmm. the same thing we're talking about here of posting from the bank page versus an individual.
Absolutely, and it's got more of an organic reach naturally, also. Yeah.
You're more likely to just read the post, mm-hmm. and often for most community banks, like your loan officers just have big networks and they're known in the community, and it just kind of makes sense for it to come from them. So yeah, so let's talk like the second piece here was around creating a culture, mm-hmm. a culture of this, a culture of brand advocacy and brand ambassadorship.
Yeah,
and we had a couple episodes ago we talked about how marketing kind of starts with culture, and this is sort of the same thing. It's an extension of that, right? Like most banks have an HR system in place where you're getting employees excited about the bank. You're excited about the bank's brand, why, how you do things differently and better than your competitors. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the foundation that needs to be here, right? For brand ambassadorship to work. Like you need to give people a vision, a structure of what to talk about when they go out and talk about the bank.
Well, it's that structure, but it's also the sense of connectivity and all of that. I mean, part of corporate culture ideally is to build a sense of ownership by everybody in the bank, on the team, top to bottom, right? Yep. And they feel that sense of pride, that ownership, that those types of things. And marketing is a great way to do that, because your frontline staff isn't going to be engaged in, investment strategy for the assets of the bank or board level things or all of, there's just really no way to have everybody on the team and involved in everything except marketing is one of those few things, that everybody can do. So if everybody on staff, loan officers, frontline staff, all of that have that buy-in, and you can get them excited around a brand and a message and what it is that we're doing. And hey guys, let's do that and get everybody rowing in the same direction, on the team. People feel good about that. People feel like I'm not just going to work and punching a clock and leaving and going home. I'm adding value. I'm adding, if you want to look at it this way, I'm adding to my own job security by helping build the brand. I'm adding to, you know what I'm saying? It's all those things. So taking that and sharing the mission, the values, those types of things with employees and saying, and we need you, and creating tools and ways that they can be a part of that feels great.
Yeah.
It feels bought in.
Yeah. You're part of the community. You're valued in different ways. And yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And when they're excited about it, they want to talk about it.
Right.
I'm some of my proudest moments, Dan, as an agency owner, is when one of my team currently of 15 folks, and I talked to a client, and this actually happened recently, and they say, man, you should have heard how so-and-so on your team was talking about your team. Was talking about, just what they did. And, it was one of my team members that is just, one of those. And a client told me that. And I'm like, one of my team members is walking around with their chest poked out about what an incredible place they work and what a great impact we have for clients and all that other kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow. And I think that's what we're talking about here. Dan, I just told you a story, by the way, which is a lead in to, we're going to talk about storytelling here in a minute, but that's a great example of, man, if your team is telling your story and is excited about it, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's better than $50,000 worth of digital ads. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it really is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, I think it's, you're either kind of building this culture or you're not, right? If you're not doing intentional things to build your internal culture, right? The first step is not to just encourage people to post to social media. It's, what can you do to do that? And that's gets a lot more into the HR realm than the marketing realm, but you've got to have that base of excitement about the bank's brand, about what you're doing for your customers, because those things are going to kind of play off of. And so the next section or thing we want to talk about was if you have that, right, how do you empower your staff? And, I think you probably already have a couple people in the bank that are already very prolific on social media, and I think a lot of it starts with them. It's like, look at what they're doing, look at how they're growing their followings, look at what they post about when they post about the bank, and use that to start developing some social media guidelines.
Yeah. And that's what the bank has to provide. You have to give the nuts and bolts from a compliance and leadership standpoint. That can be as simple as a one-sheet thing that's got a list of do's and don'ts, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the do's. There's two ways to think about it, right? It's do's and don'ts of obviously don't post identifiable customer information unless you have permission, like those types of things. Mm-hmm. You also don't want it to feel, you also don't want the ambassadorship thing to feel like a work, right? So help employees do more, right? So the do's can be even just a list of ideas of things to post about.
Right. Talk about how we influence the community.
Yeah.
Talk about, how great, so much of our staff here has been working here for decades because it's such a great place. Yeah. There you go, Dan.
Yeah.
You were saying give them specific ideas.
Employee quote, or customer quotes, when a customer says something great, ask if you can share it, ingrain it in that culture. But a lot of banks will tend to go towards the compliance of don't do this, you can't do this, don't do this. And you're going to kind of prevent people from sharing stuff, right?
Yeah.
So there's got to be some restrictions, but you want to really focus on the fun stuff and what they can, what you want to promote them to do.
Well, as you were helping put this together for today, Dan, I loved how you said it's focus on the opportunities, not the restrictions.
Yeah.
Yes, the restrictions and the guidelines and the compliance has to be there. They need to understand that. They can't go off and create their own, message about the mission of the bank or, and those types of things. Right. And they can't talk about specific people without their permission. And there are all these compliance things. Yeah.
What we've done at a few banks is like a brainstorming workshop. Right. So we'll kind of figure out who in the bank wants to be part of this ambassador program and have a 2-hour kind of lunch workshop that we will go through and in a structured way, go through different categories of posts, your customer questions. Let's spend a few minutes brainstorming all the customer questions you can think about. Let's spend a few minutes brainstorming all the terminology you can think about, all the stuff. What are most of your phone calls about? Password resets and paper statements and things like that. So there's a bunch of post ideas, and those can come from employee. You figure out some of them might make sense more from the bank's page, some of them might make sense from the employee's page. But you're doing this workshop together and getting people to think about, like, I don't want to post stuff on my own personal social media page if somebody says, hey, go post this. But if it's my idea, if I come up with it, I'm making a plan, I'm much more interested in doing that. So it's kind of helping, not decreeing what your employees should do, but helping them to do it.
Yeah. And it's balancing that with maybe providing some templates. And like you said, ideal lists and story lists and those types of things. And, or if it's something that they could fairly easily transition over to their personal, is things that are posted on the bank's, channels are compliance approved. They aren't that, so sometimes just simply sharing those and adding an organic feel or recommendation or personal story or something to it by an employee, it can be, an easier way to stay in and around the boundaries.
Yeah. So you can have a list of approved topics, or you can come at them in a workshop like that. You can, publish the bank's social media calendar so employees are ready to share when posts go out. You can make templates or make other kinds of guidelines like that, and just make it easy, right? Not to restrict, but just to make it easy for people to share stuff. And
Dan, I loved one of your ideas was sharing a weekly or a monthly, like an idea, a content roundup email with that team that you're talking about, with an internal team. Hey guys, here's some fresh ideas. Here's what's going on, or here's what's going on in the community for us.
Yeah,
that was a great idea. Yeah, don't make it hard.
Yeah. And that's actually something I recommend to a lot of banks. That's like their first, if they're not doing email newsletters, right? That's a good first way to start doing email newsletters, but also promote your social, is just even from the bank, a monthly email saying, here's the cool stuff you missed on Facebook this month. And, but from employees, it's just, your employees could post once a week of, hey, you might have missed this last week, but here's this cool thing the bank did. I'm proud to be an employee here, stuff like that. Proud to be part of this community. And then you can break this down. This is probably fodder for future episodes of the Bank Marketing Show, but the strategies for LinkedIn and Facebook are a little different, right? And LinkedIn may be more your commercial loan officers posting. So you might break up your ambassadorship program into parts, or start with that. Usually, I find the loan officers tend to be the most excited to start posting because it's directly related to their compensation, right? If they get referrals through social media, they personally benefit. So it's usually easier to get loan officers going on stuff than the rest of the bank or back office folks. So think about that. Think about your bank structure and what makes the most sense. So maybe you just start with 3 or 4 loan officers on a LinkedIn program and do that for a few months. Get them to post. Use that to develop your guidelines and your best practices and your do's and don'ts. And then it's much easier to expand the program down the line.
Yeah. Well, Dan, earlier, to kind of go to our next area that we wanted to discuss here is earlier I gave a quick example of storytelling.
Yep.
And that is, storytelling is authentic. People on your team sharing, on their own social is not about, hey, let me tell you how great my bank's checking account is. Right. That's not, if you're trying to do product-specific things or something like that, you're totally missing the point, of this team and, team member influencer opportunity, don't you think? Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is like it's one of these intuitive things of like, it's just much more interesting to read a story, but it's not, it's often just a simple flip, right? I work with the bank on their social media strategy, and 90% of what I tell them is, comes down to, don't just have a post. It's like, our community bank is proud to, represent the employees of such and such, farm.
Yeah, blah.
Come on. But you flip that around and say, this farm is doing some really interesting things, and then you put that sentence of, we're proud to support them at the bottom.
Yeah.
People stop reading because it just sounds promotional from the start. But if you started out with the interesting thing, right? Like you put the hook right at the beginning, the interesting point you want to make is the first sentence, the first 3 words. And then people notice the post, right? They might not read the whole post, but nobody really does anymore. People are scrolling through social, scanning stuff.
Yeah.
So you put the hook first. You put the really engaging story bit first, and that'll encourage people to read more if it's something they're interested in.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things along those lines, Dan, that people genuinely like to do is authentically talk about other people, in good ways. And we had one specifically last year where one of the kind of VP level folks on their own social media said, 17 years ago, I was hired by, I'll make up the name, Susie. I was hired by Susie, who at that time had already been to the bank, and now we're celebrating Susie's retirement. The impact that Susie has had on my life, not to mention my career, is so profound. And so many people, and so this VP went on and on about Susie, because they were getting ready for Susie's retirement and all of that. And so organically in there, the bank is named, and the bank is mentioned and all of that. But it's not about the bank. It's certainly not, it's a story about someone and how Susie influenced that VP's life so much. And man, it exploded. I mean, that post was on the VP's personal Facebook and Instagram, I think, and man, I mean, just, it got shared and all over the place and everything else. And it was baked in that it was about the bank, but it certainly was not a post about the bank.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
You picture a different version of that post that starts out with, our bank is proud to do, proud to have done this, and it gets no traction.
Yeah.
But you put the hook up front, you make it about the story, and it goes a lot further.
Yeah. And Dan, one of the things that I personally love about working in this industry so much is that it is filled with really great people. It just is. And I mean, we work with banks from New Mexico to Illinois to South Georgia to, everything in between. And especially between your agency and mine, we're all over the place. And man, they're just really great people in this industry.
Yeah.
Which bakes in the fact that there are so many story opportunities there. And those people that are making a difference because a loan that was made in this town to rehab a little hotel or something like that is significantly changing that downtown. Or it's, anyway, I mean, what I mean? It's just the stories are there because of the people.
The social media post is about the transformation of downtown, not about the loan. Right?
Correct.
Think about that. It's like,
it was a great rate.
Right.
So
we are proud to have financed the construction of the empty lot. Like, no, it's, look at all the fun you can have downtown, by the way. We're excited to have contributed to this. Yep. It's simple flip. So like everything you're doing is like, you think about that. And that's like, getting back to the ambassadorship thing, like that's what you're training your employees to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you used the word spotlight. Yeah. Spotlight is great. So when you're creating a story, what you do is you spotlight something. So you're spotlighting, you're right, something cool that's helping transform the community, or you're spotlighting a person that you care about, or
Yeah. But even, and you might not have something like that every day, right? But so even, I think even the mundane, right? If it relates to people, like another flip I tell banks is like, don't, and I'm sure I've said this on this podcast before, but it's like, don't say Happy National Donut Day and post a stock image of a donut, right? Go buy, $7 of donuts from the grocery store, put them in the break room and take a picture of your employees eating donuts.
Yep.
And say all of us, at such and such bank, are enjoying National Donut Day, right? It's almost the same post, but that little flip of making it about people and putting the human, the story first is really what makes the difference.
Yep. And it incorporates a natural organic part of the brand, which is, your people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And doesn't take that much effort.
Yeah.
So
I think maybe we should do a future episode here on all the social media ideas. But, I think the point of including this little section here was just you've got to give employees ideas for what to do. And, and so these tips can kind of help with that. You can start building your best practice guide, your do's and don'ts from it. Lots of different paths you can go down, but just remember that whatever you're posting about on the bank page or on employee pages is like story, human side first, and, the bank's contribution later.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So the last bit about this, the last section of this topic, right, is what we often see too is banks will try to get this program started and everybody gets really excited. And, you get employees starting to post and they'll post daily for a week or two. And then something happens, right? And then they get busy. They go on vacation, right? They're trying to close a new deal and it falls off. And then it's even harder to get started again. So the fifth point here we're making is about sustaining momentum, right, of the program. And it's just really hard, right? It's almost easier to get started than it is to maintain that 3, 4, 6, 10 months down the line. And I think it's one of these things to think about it as a marathon, not a sprint. Keep in mind the algorithms on pretty much all the social media channels reward consistency over frequency. And the best is consistency plus frequency, but consistency is more important.
Yeah.
Right. Meaning you could post 10 times this week and then not post next week and then post 10 times again. But if you'd posted 10 times every week, you're going to get a lot more traction because the algorithm sees you're invested. Right. And, they want you an active participant in the community. So posting, commenting on other people's posts, sharing other people's posts, sharing the bank posts, it's going to create this kind of network effect. And it's just really hard to keep up that momentum. So you can develop your best practice guides, but often what we see works best is some kind of ongoing program, right? An ambassador, the brand ambassador group meets monthly for lunch.
There you go.
Right. Or has a monthly meeting to check in what's working, what's not, what was your most successful post this month, that type of stuff. Some ongoing component to keep people accountable. I've seen it as simple as, creating a Microsoft Teams channel for the ambassadors.
Yeah.
Or Slack channel or something like that, all the way up to lunches every month.
Yeah. And back to, those are great tangible ways to do that and to repeat the idea earlier of, so the marketing director or a C-suite, leadership person is sending a quote unquote newsletter email out, but just to that ambassador group.
Yeah.
Weekly or monthly with new content ideas or things they may not know are going on, with the bank that was a really cool story about a first-time home buyer or whatever the case may be. So kind of helping with those ideas and reminders to keep that momentum going. Yeah. I like what you said about it's a marathon, not a sprint, because the program that we're talking about today that can be significantly influential for the brand of the bank is not going to do a lot of good if everybody's all excited about it and you've got 10 ambassadors and they're posting like crazy for a week or two and then they get sidetracked and then it just falls off the rails. It's better to, hey guys, how about once a week and let's keep this going? Yeah, and start out once a week and you may not need that forever. Yeah. But that's going to keep people accountable. The more they're accountable, the more they post. And the more they post, the more you learn from it and make it easier.
And as you see how people are going about this, you can adjust the approach. And, as a marketing team, you can create more tools and add to your best practice guides and make it easier for people. And probably after 3 or 4 months, if people are consistent for a few months, it's a habit, and, you may need less, you may be able to back off the touch points.
Yeah.
But it's that, taking it, forming it from converting that excitement into a long-term habit. That's hard.
And getting feedback from those ambassadors consistently about what's really working.
Yeah.
What was easy for them to put out there, but then also what really got a lot of engagement.
Yeah. Take metrics, right? Like snapshot the highest engaging 2 or 3 posts each month. Look at the followers, look at everyone's followers, and keep it in a spreadsheet, right? Because it's also hard to remember. Well, I only have 500 followers. It's not doing anything. But maybe 6 months ago, you only had 100 followers.
There you go.
You might not remember down the line that your followers have 5x'd in 6 months, and so keep going another 6 months, and it'll be you'll grow quite a bit. But tracking those metrics and looking at them can help a lot of just understanding how much it's actually impacted. Yeah. And I what I find too is referrals will pick up, right? Especially from like loan officer LinkedIn activity. It's not loan officers out there selling, it's just loan officers out there. You might not always know that all the referrals come in from social. They might not all appear to come from, you're not going to get a DM on social with every referral. But I think if you do this for a year, right, and look back, well, how was this year versus the previous year before we started the ambassador program, you're going to notice a big difference in referrals and mentions and how customers are talking about you. But it's subtle incremental changes over time. So you really got to like track numbers and look back and see how it's working.
Well, and Dan, I know for you and I, our perspective is the big wrap-up thought here is how everything that we've talked about, it raises the tide of the brand, your culture. It sees other team members, see your ambassador team members active and engaged and all of that, which is, has a ripple effect. So it has this external marketing ripple effect that we're trying to achieve by influencers, out there carrying our brand out and our brand message out and our people and all of those things. But it also, just has ripple effect, internal and external, that you just can't buy.
Yeah. And an important point to make here too is that your employee brands benefit. So those loan officers are building their personal brand. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, but they're building their personal book of business. But employees are building their personal brand, and that can lead to different opportunities for them in the community and within the bank. And so they should be motivated to do this. But growing the bank brand helps the employee's brand grow, and vice versa. Yeah, and helps everyone benefit collectively.
Yep, absolutely. Well, really cool. This is I don't want to call it a hidden gem, but this is something that every single financial institution out there can take better advantage of doing this. It takes a little effort, but there's nothing but upswing. Yes, you have to have some compliance parameters around this, and our agency even has a monitoring tool, that's a compliance monitoring tool for social media that can help with this. And, I'm glad to talk to folks about that. So yes, you've got to have, the left and right ditch and keep things in the lane. But there's so much room for doing that by the means and tactics and ideas that you and I have talked about today. Yeah. And Dan, I know this is one of those, you and I love having conversations with folks too. So if you're listening to this and going, okay, well, yeah, that all sounds great, but I don't quite understand how we could do this part or this part, then we want to invite folks to reach out through bankmarketingshow.com, connect with us through the website, and we love having these conversations with you, sharing some best practices ideas. Dan, you've talked about a number of things that you've done in workshops and, guidance with some of your clients, and we've done so much of the same, and it's fun to share that stuff.
If anyone wants to email us, contact at bankmarketingshow.com. I've got some templates and some documents that could help you get started on things like best practices or structures for a brainstorming workshop. Yep. Happy to share what what we've got. So feel free to reach out.
And if you've listened today and you wish that you took notes, the good thing is we did that for you. So, yeah. So go to the show notes in the episode and, check us out. And if you haven't already, be sure that you're following us on your favorite podcast channels, because we're on Spotify and Apple and all the big podcast channels. So be sure and do that. Even give us a review. So there's some organic too. So we'd love for you to do that and help us to spread this, because we're out here to share resources and love doing that.
Yep. Smash that subscribe button, as they say.
There you go. Well, Dan, thank you, man. Great stuff today.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
Appreciate it very much. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us. To go deeper or get access to some of the valuable nuggets from today's show, go to bankmarketingshow.com. There you'll find episodes, links to resources, and much more. Be sure to subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. And join us next time.